Portsmouth, New Hampshire, on the Atlantic coast, can be a cold and bitter place, even in spring. On a gray and rainy New England day last week, 19 months before the presidential election, John McCain came here to make a critical speech. This is a seaport town and home to one of the few remaining Navy shipyards in the nation. The senator from Arizona has been here before. As Todd Burnham of Vanity Fair magazine recently wrote, given his status as a popular maverick war hero, John McCain stands a pretty good chance of getting elected president in 2008 if he can get his party's nomination. Right now, that looks to be a very big if. Metaphorically, as a candidate, John McCain has his back to the wall, his shirt tails on fire, and the bill collectors at the door. He trails former New York Mayor Rudolph Giuliani and former Massachusetts Governor Mitt Romney in the battle for campaign funds, regularly trails Giuliani in almost every poll. So McCain is having to retool, remake his campaign. Question, can he get off the deck? Can he bring it back? Can he get the party's nomination?
Senator, are you ready for today?
No.
When Senator McCain arrived in New Hampshire this year, there were overcast skies and cloudy opinions about his strong support of the war in Iraq.
USA! USA! Support those troops!
McCain has lost what was once a good-sized lead in the polls. He has been laboring lately under perceptions in the press and political circles that his early unofficial campaign was sputtering, that it had lost momentum and trailed in money raising. So McCain came here this day to essentially jumpstart a new drive for the presidential nomination.
It's wonderful to be back, and today I announce my candidacy for President of the United States.
In contrast to the announcement crowds of other candidates,
I stand before you today to announce my candidacy for President of the United States of America.
McCain's was a small, comparatively lackluster audience. But McCain delivered with passion his core message, that he is the best, most qualified candidate in the race.
My friends, we face formidable challenges. I'm not afraid of them. I'm prepared for them. I'm not the youngest candidate, but I am the most experienced.
Later, standing in front of his bus called the Straight Talk Express, the soft-spoken senator didn't back down when asked if his strong stance in favor of the Iraq war would hurt his chances with an American public increasingly against it.
I don't know and I don't care. This conflict is far more important than any political ambitions that I might have. I've said on several occasions, I'd rather lose a campaign than lose a war.
So questions linger about whether or not Senator McCain, who won the New Hampshire primary in 2000, can do it again. I talked with him about that, the war and other issues that are important to him as we rode from the rally, the first of many stops that day. What's the message today, Senator? You've got many stops before you go. Cindy's smiling because she knows how many stops. What's the basic message?
That I'm ready to serve. My life has prepared me for it. I'm qualified. I have the vision, the experience, and I believe the ability to address the challenges of our time. But I'm also very optimistic about the ability of America to prevail in this century as we did in the last.
If you had to pick one and only one most important issue, topic of the campaign, what would it be?
It had to be the war against radical Islamic extremism, which is a great threat to the West, America, everything we value, everything we treasure. This is a great force for evil, and they've got their tentacles every place on earth.
What's the plan for dealing with radical Islamic extremism? Long pull, what's the strategy? You're a military person.
Well, as I tried to point out in my comments, in my announcement speech, we have to have diplomatic, intelligence, military, propaganda. When I say propaganda, I mean that in the best sense of the word. Right now, some would argue that Al Jazeera and others are doing a better job at making the case for radical Islam than we are for our values and standards. So I think it has to be a package of many elements and recognizing the complexities and the nature of the challenge.
I know you've been traveling a lot. No doubt you've seen former Mayor Giuliani's comments that if the Democrats are elected, a terrorist attack is more likely. You agree, disagree?
I think that if I'm elected, that I can make America safer. I think I'm most qualified to lead in that challenge. Now, whether a, quote, Democrat would lead to a greater attack, I can't say that. I know that I can make America safer, and I know that I'm the best one to do it.
Well, you've said yourself there are a lot of good people running in both parties, quoting John McCain.
Yes.
Why you and not Rudolph Giuliani or Mitt Romney?
I think I have the qualifications. I've served in peace and in war. I know good from evil. I know how to address the military, the Congress, and the American people. And I believe I know how to motivate and lead.
Senator, the New York Times, among others, used the phrase, and I will put this in quotation marks, that you've been on a panderthon, saying that in an effort to get the nomination so you can actually get one-on-one with the Democratic candidates, that you've changed positions, you've been pandering. I want to give you a chance to respond to it directly.
Well, I think if you look at my voting record and my positions on issues that I really haven't, whether it be immigration reform or stem cell research or a broad variety of issues, they're the same. I know that some people say that, but the fact is that my voting record is the same, my positions are the same, and I'm proud of my record. I guess maybe some people may be surprised to find out that I'm a conservative, but I've got a 24-year record of that.
Surprised because as a longtime self-described conservative, McCain walks the bipartisan tightrope masterfully, siding with Democrats on issues such as campaign finance reform, global warming, and stem cell research, among others, and staunchly Republican on such hot-button issues as abortion, same-sex marriage, and gun control. He views his bipartisanship as one of his strengths, but he knows many Republicans don't see it that way, at least not yet. Senator, straight talk. Your campaign's off to a slow start. Mm-hmm. Is this the start of the comeback? Is that the way you view it? Tell me how you view it.
I view it as campaigns always have ups and downs. People win primaries, people lose primaries, people have failings, and the key to success in any campaign, in my view, is a steady strain. When you get bad news, don't get down. When you get good news, don't get up. Just, as it's an old Navy saying, as you know, Dan, a steady strain, and recognize that if you're going to be able to carry out your message and you emphasize your qualifications, you're going to win. If you don't, the greatest opportunity that a guy who stood fifth from the bottom of his class at the Naval Academy ever had was a chance to run for the nomination of my party and the leadership of this nation.
In many ways, John McCain is just the kind of guy people like to see win. He was born into a military family where his father and grandfather were Navy admirals. McCain, with bad behavior and ghastly grades, barely squeaked by at the Naval Academy. As a young naval aviator trainee, he crashed his plane, narrowly escaping death. He avoided death again in 1967 when, aboard the USS Forrestal on its way to Vietnam, a missile accidentally fired on board, causing an explosion, killing 134 crewmen and injuring scores more. Just 3 months later, while on an operation over Vietnam, McCain's plane was hit by enemy fire. He was badly injured and taken hostage by the North Vietnamese, who tortured him. He refused an early release because other POWs had been held longer. McCain remained a prisoner of war for 5.5 years. He emerged a war hero. People respect him for that, and it has helped him politically. McCain was elected to the Arizona House of Representatives in 1982, serving 2 terms without much controversy. In 1986, he was elected to the U.S. Senate, where he turned heads by siding with Democratic Senator John McCain on the issue of veterans' rights and relations with Vietnam. Over the years, he's gained a reputation for being blunt and having a temper. He's been dubbed a maverick, and his refusal to toe the full party line has often angered his fellow Republicans. At the same time, his style and what he stands for has won many people over. He sought the Republican nomination for president in 2000 and became the dark horse favorite after trouncing then-Governor George Bush here in New Hampshire. After that, the Bush forces pounded him mercilessly, and he basically lost the 2000 race for the nomination in South Carolina, where negative campaigns against him and his comments about the Confederate flag and religious right cost him valuable support in the South. Still, despite that lost presidential bid, much of his popularity has lingered. Most people around him are used to his taunting.
Hey, what are you doing back here, you little jerk?
And good-natured sarcasm.
Cindy, that is traitorous conduct.
Let's keep it going, guys.
Which is why he's had a made-for-TV movie based on his Vietnam experiences, and he's a frequent guest in the talk show circuit.
You've been on the program more than any other guest, I think 9 or 10 times. You're our most frequent contributor.
But lately, the tide has been turning against him, and even some of his longtime admirers, like The Daily Show's Jon Stewart, aren't pulling any punches.
All I'm saying is you cannot look a soldier in the eye and say questioning the president is less supportive to you than extending your tour 3 months when you should be coming home to your family.
Every American.
And that's not fair to put on people that criticize.
In 2000, the John McCain most of us saw was candid, unscripted, and funny. This time, as his Straight Talk Express traveled through New Hampshire, from rally to interviews, there weren't many glimpses of the classic McCain. Mostly, he stuck carefully to the teleprompter and fielded reporters' questions casually but cautiously.
Things are tough. This is very tough. I'm not saying a few dead enders. I'm not saying last throws. I'm not saying mission accomplished. I am saying that it is possible to succeed, establish an environment of economic and political stability so that the Maliki government can govern and the Iraqi military can take over our responsibilities. I don't think it's easy. I can't guarantee it, but I can guarantee the consequences of failure.
There is a sense this time around that McCain is hunkering down for a long, serious battle, and the New Hampshire won't be the easy win that it was in 2000. Journalists on the campaign trail here in New Hampshire have been saying things like, well, McCain's campaign has collapsed, or McCain is in the distinct descendancy. That's not the kind of thing that the Arizona senator wants to hear. So he's in New Hampshire trying to mount a comeback. And let's remember this, in politics, overnight is a long time. A week is forever. And at this point, we're talking about a presidential election that doesn't happen for well over a year from now, and even the important nominating caucuses and primaries don't happen for many months. McCain has time to make the comeback. The question is, how does he do it? By the time he arrived at his final stop in Manchester, a chill was in the air, and it had been raining steadily for over an hour. McCain, standing under a Boston Red Sox umbrella and hoping for a political World Series rebirth, pressed on.
In a campaign, we shouldn't lose sight that much more defines us than our partisanship, much more unites us than divides us.
Breaking once from his message when prodded by anti-war protesters.
It guides me to meet the challenges of our time. Thank you, my friends, and listen, this is what free speech is all about. Live free or die. Thank you. Thank you.
For McCain, war has always been his burden, whether Vietnam, Iraq, or the battle he's currently waging in New Hampshire and across the country. He made that clear when he shared a little more straight talk with several reporters at the end of his day. We saw a bit of that classic McCain, standing his ground, speaking his mind, defiant against the odds and the way the winds of war seem to be blowing just now.
As I mentioned to you before, wars aren't static. They either get worse or things get better. And I'm hoping that they'll get better. But I think also, having said that, that there's very deep-seated feeling about the war, no matter how well it went, that people will still feel very strongly. Walked over to shake hands with those protesters today, and they were polite enough to shake hands, but this one guy, I saw real anger, you know, in his face, and there's, you know, people are, I understand the frustration. So I don't know if there would be more or less protesters, but I know the situation won't be the same on the ground in Iraq, just as it's different from what it was just a few weeks ago.
How do you think this day went?
Fine. I feel badly when people have to stand out in the rain. I was flattered that so many would stay, but I think it went fine. I think it went fine. These are the things that you go through, and I'm pleased at the way things are going. Again, we've got South Carolina. We're going to 3 places in South Carolina, as you know. Iowa, and then, as you know, back in Phoenix, we'll do an event there.
I started to say, if you win, from your viewpoint, when you win, you'd be 72 when you sworn in. People such as Senator Barack Obama say it's time for a new page, time for change, time for new people.
Well, I understand that discussion, and if I were his age, look, I think it's time for a steady hand at the tiller. I think if there's ever a time we need experience and we need the ability to hit the ground running, it's now. This challenge of radical Islamic extremism is a transcendent challenge of our time, and we cannot afford any on-the-job training. I respect the credentials of others, the ambitions, and the intellect. I'm the one with the experience.
Okay, guys, we're here.
The vision.
Okay.
Thanks.
So, is it working? Is the McCain comeback starting to click or not? You will see and hear what some voters think next.